Good morning, River Community Church. My name is Judy. My husband Dennis and I are part of the pastoral team here at the River. We're very honored to be a part of that. We got here just about a year ago to the date, and so I greet you on this beautiful Sunday morning. It will be good to spend some time with you. Before I went on from this moment, I just wanted to take a second and thank all the incredible pastors that have gone before me in this series. I have gleaned so much and received so much from them. So thank you to Pastor Rob, Pastor Danny, Pastor Josh. Thank you to our lead pastors, Pastor Jim and Pam Duran. Oh my God, this has just been an incredible time together. So thank you. We're almost at the end of this series on overcoming obstacles. I think we have one more after me. Today we're going to be talking about overcoming the obstacle of loneliness. Overcoming the obstacle of loneliness. If I were to title this message, I would say that it would be called Known by Name. So if you're taking notes, you might want to scribble it at the top, Known by Name. So loneliness, it's really hard to escape loneliness, isn't it? It's kind of everywhere, and we've all experienced it. We can be in a large room of people, really, and experience loneliness. We can be at a party and experience loneliness. We can be in a marriage and sadly experience loneliness. Even in friendship, I've had people say, everyone thinks I have a lot of friends, but actually I'm very, very lonely. You know, the antidote for loneliness is belonging. That's right. Belonging to someone or something that is greater than ourselves. You know, the basic human needs in our life, shelter, food, and then right underneath it comes belonging. Belonging. But I think that there are people that are out there that would trade belonging over shelter, belonging over food, belonging even though I've made mistakes, even though I've had failure, belonging, right? Today, if you've ever said to yourself, I know I have, does God see me? Do I belong? This message is for you, my friend. And I'm not going to make you wait to the very end to answer those questions. God does see you, and you do belong. Today we're going to be traveling behind the scenes to meet up with an Egyptian slave girl named Hagar. Hagar has often taken a backseat to some names that you may be more familiar with. Abraham and Sarah. Some famous names, right? You will know them in today's reading as Sarai and Abram. We will see how God brings Hagar out of her lonely and desperate situation to the front stage. We will know that the Lord did for Hagar what he wants to do for you and me. Before we get into Hagar's story, there's a backstory. Just like you and I have a backstory, there's a backstory to Hagar. So let's go to Genesis. And if you're new to the Bible, it's super easy to find. It's the very first book in the Bible. It's Genesis, and we're going to go to chapter 12. Here we go, Genesis 12, and we're going to read till verse 9. The Lord said to Abraham, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless whoever blesses you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. So Abram went, and as the Lord had told him, and Lot with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to the land of Canaan. We see here in the text that God is giving Abraham some amazing promises, one of them being he would be a great nation. In other words, he was going to have many, many children. We see that Abraham is no different than you and I. He longs for relationship and connection. Abraham brings his nephew Lot. But we read in the text that God said, leave your people and your father's household. So he only partially obeys. Perhaps there was a fear in Abraham of being lonely. I don't know why Abraham brought Lot along. What I do know is this: whenever God asks us to leave behind anything or anyone, resulting a perceived loss in our eyes, it's because he wants to satisfy our loneliness and belonging with something better, his presence. I want to say that again. Whenever God asks us to leave behind anything or anyone, resulting in a perceived loss in our eyes, it's because he wants to satisfy our loneliness with something better, his presence. Sometimes we settle for something that doesn't satisfy when we're lonely. Abraham brought Lot. He would cause Abraham a lot of trouble later on. Sometimes our loneliness or our anticipation of being lonely causes us to settle for something less than that what God would have for us. But wait, there's more to the story. So they're traveling along and they come upon an unexpected detour. So let's go to Genesis 12. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a gorgeous woman. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken to the palace. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, and male and female servants and camels. I want you to notice that they acquired some things there, some of them being female servants. Hold on to that, because that's going to become really important as we travel along in this backstory. Here we are. Now we're going into Genesis 15. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me, since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eleazar of Damascus? And Abram said, You've given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Eleazar was Abram's servant and associate. He was a good man, but not a son to Abram. Then the word of the Lord came to him. This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and he said, Look up into the sky and count the stars, if you indeed can count them. Then he said, So shall your offspring be. And then Abram believed the Lord, and he was accredited to him as righteousness. 10 long years have passed since God's promise to Abraham. Abraham had been waiting for the promise, but Sarah is still not pregnant. They're getting a little desperate. Abraham was now older, 75 years old, and he was beginning to lose hope in God's promise. Then the word of the Lord came to Moses. The word of the Lord comes in many different ways, by an audible voice, by visions or dreams, by the ministry of angels. Here the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Abram had just defeated an army, and God was encouraging Abram. In this scripture, you hear the reassurance. We can hear the Lord reminding Abraham, you are not alone. I'm still here, and my promise is still on the table. Perhaps you need to hear this today. Let the word sink in. God is with you. He knows how long you have been waiting. God hasn't gone anywhere. He still makes good on his promises. So here we go. We're going into Genesis 6:16, and you're going to get to meet Hagar. As you read the text, you'll notice that Hagar is on the scene very suddenly. Where did she come from? The Bible offers no information about Hagar except for introducing her as an Egyptian slave girl that belongs to Sarai, Abram's wife. It gives us pause to wonder if Abraham and Sarah acquired Hagar while in Egypt. It makes sense. And you may wonder right now, why is she talking to me about this? Well, you'll see. Let's read on. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had bore him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go and sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her. Wait, did not God promise Abraham and Sarah an heir? Not Abraham and Hagar. But Sarai is desperate, and she's perhaps very lonely. She wants a child. I can imagine her seeing other women with their children playing and having a good time, and she's in this desperate and very lonely place. And I'm sure she's saying, you know what? I'm going to make this happen. So let's read on. Abram agreed to what Sarai said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave, Hagar, and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her witness. Then Sarai said to Abram, you're responsible for the wrong I'm suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now she is pregnant, and she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. Your slave is in your hands, Abram says. Do with her whatever you think best. Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from them. Have you noticed something? We have not heard one word from Hagar. Not one word. The only dialogue going on is between Abraham and Sarah. We remember that Hagar is an Egyptian slave. Her voice would not matter. Her only experience of belonging would be to Abraham and Sarah. Have you ever been in that place? It's a place wondering if your voice matters or if you're seen. Let me tell you, God hears what is not being said, just like he saw the lonely and sad situation that Hagar was on. Let's read on. In verse 7, the angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was a spring beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? Let's notice something here. It's very, very important, and we'd miss it if we hurry by. God knew her name. God knew Hagar's name. God knows your name. You're not lost in the crowd. You're not just a number. You are seen and you are known by name. So here we go on. I'm running away from my mistress Sarai, she says. The angel of the Lord told her, go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they'll be too numerous to count. That sounds like a familiar promise, doesn't it? The angel of the Lord also said to her, you are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael. By the way, that name Ishmael means God listens. For the Lord has heard of your misery. The Lord has heard of your misery. The Lord has heard of your misery. This is very important. Hagar was never alone. God was aware of it all. I don't know where you are today, but don't give in to the lie that God is absent. He knows exactly where you are in this moment and exactly what you need. We're reading on now to verse 12. He says about Ishmael, he will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility towards all his brothers. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. It's still there between Kadesh and Bir. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael, God listens, to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. So here we are. You have the backstory and the present story. Going back as we reflect on Abraham and Sarah's detour during the famine, could it be that God watched over Hagar and he removed her from Egypt? Could God have orchestrated the side trip to Egypt, not just because he wanted Abraham and Sarah in, but because he wanted to bring Hagar out? She was not God's afterthought, nor his second choice. Nor are you an afterthought. Her longing for belonging was just answered in the desert. With God, nothing is accidental. Abraham and Sarah's side trip was not a side trip at all. It was a part of Hagar's story. So here we go. Most scholars agree that the angel of the Lord that met Hagar is a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus. We have here the first recorded appearance of the angel of the Lord. Hagar was also the first single mom, and she gives God a name that we acknowledge today. The name she gives God, El Roi, has beautiful meaning. You are the God who sees me. Right now, can you just say that wherever you are? You are the God who sees me. All other names of God were given by God himself. She is also the first woman in the Bible to whom God directly gives a promise. Not bad for an Egyptian slave girl. Have you ever felt like Hagar? She most certainly felt alone. She most certainly had a longing for belonging. She might have thought that she was only a plan B in someone else's scheme until she was met up in the desert with Elroy. Maybe you feel like you are only a plan B or an innocent bystander in a situation you find yourself in, maybe even right now. Maybe you are reaping the consequences of someone else's sin. But I just want to say to you, you are never God's plan B. Perhaps you wonder if how you think or who you are matters to anyone. Take heart. I hope you saw that God was utterly aware in prayer and present in Hagar's life as he is right now with you. What did God do for Hagar? Let's go back over and see all the things he did for her. He gave her instructions for her safety and well-being. He wants to do that for you today too. He gave her encouragement. She would bear a son. He gave her a promise. He would multiply her descendants. And she did not return back alone. She had encountered God. I believe so much in my heart. The reason she was able to obey and go back was that she was seen and heard. And more than anything, she was not alone. She belonged. She had a sense of belonging. Someone knew her by name and heard of her misery, but not just a somebody or something. Elroy. She was known by God and seen by God. So, how do we overcome the obstacle of loneliness? Well, I'm going to stop here and just tell you a little bit about a personal experience that I had. You know, we're a perfectly blended family. We fiercely love each other. My husband Dennis, our daughters Christina and Mickey. But when our family was very young, something happened that threatened to fracture our family. It was a very severe assault on our family. And my personality is that all the thoughts on how to deal with that went inward. So I began to have these thoughts. And they went something like this. Where does our family belong now? God, do you see what's happening to my family? God, are you there? And these thoughts would go over and over and over in my head. They became deeper and deeper and darker until they were embedded and became a part of who I actually was. The problem with all of that is that I had believed this enormous lie. This lie said something like, don't say it out loud. Those thoughts are not okay, and they are shame-based. You'll get in trouble for saying those thoughts, or people will think bad of you. And you know, those are all big lies. Until one day, the massiveness of these thoughts of where does my family belong? Where do I belong? Does God see me? I finally went to my husband, Dennis, and I said, I'm really struggling here. I don't know where we belong. I don't know where God is. And you know, he gave me some incredible words. He said, well, Judy, of course you belong. Of course God loves us. He sees us. And you know, those words are true and they're in the Bible and I would believe them, but the massiveness of that was so huge. Like I said, it was as big as a Grand Canyon, and they would just return. Until one day my husband said, come on, you are getting in church. And I did go, and I became a part of a women's Bible study. And at that Bible study, a woman befriended me. You know, being a friend is very, very noble. I want to say that again. That being a friend to someone who has lost their sense of belonging and is in deep loneliness and despair is very, very noble. You may never get a medal for that, but never underestimate the impact that you are making by being a friend. You know, science tells us that when you befriend someone, that the neural pathways in our brain begin to change. When you become a friend to someone, the pathways in our brain begin to change. And when that person begins to feel safe, they begin to feel like they belong. And that's huge. So anyway, I'm at this women's Bible study, and this woman very wisely says to me, you know, thank you for telling me about what you're feeling. And I could do just what your husband, Dennis, did. I could tell you that you belong, and you belong here, and you belong in community, and God sees what your family is going through. But it won't last long. You need to dive into the Bible yourself. And you know, I was so tired of the way that I was thinking that I took my friend's advice and I began to dive in heads first to the Bible. And do you know that as I began to dive in, and with my friend by my side, that those thoughts begin to subside. Just like Hagar was met in the desert by God in his voice, I began to be met by God. And so this Bible has been my constant companion. In the front of it are all the notes that I took when I was getting my pastoral license. In this book are notes for Christina and Mickey and promises. There's dates by them where God has met me. There's notes in here for my grandchildren, Simone and Jordan. There's places and monuments where God has met me in a profound way. And so reading this Bible has literally changed my life. That along with an extraordinary friend. Jesus' life mission reminds us that even he refused to live in isolation. If relationships are so essential to Jesus, shouldn't they be for us as well? Like Jesus, we exist for relationship. If Jesus was history's most fully alive human, it shouldn't surprise us that a person does best within the community. I just want to simply put that we were created for community. Another way to overcome loneliness is to allow the Lord to place you in his family. Our very first need is to turn to God. I'm going to read from Psalm 68. It's right smack in the middle of your Bible. A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling place. God sets the lonely in families. He leads out the prisoners with singing. But the rebellious live in a sun-scorched land. What a beautiful phrase. He puts the lonely in families. Loneliness isn't new, and God's redemption includes salvation. In this psalm, God is praised for being our Father. You hear the word our? That means we share Him. We share Him. Our defender and our liberator. He liberates us from the prison of loneliness into the freedom of family life. But of course, the family life pictured here isn't a biological husband-wife child system. It's God's family. The River Community Church would like to connect you today with safe people who would like nothing more than to help you to get in contact with God Himself and His family. All week long, my friend, there has been a group of people praying just for you. They do not know your name like God knew Hagar's. They don't know maybe the desperate situation that you're in. These people that have been praying for you don't know that you're feeling lonely or in despair. But what they do know, is they are connected to the God who does know all those things about you. So if this is your first time listening in, or you've been listening for a long time, or you're somewhere in between, I want to encourage you to stay on the line for the prayer time, for the prayer team. But this is what I want you to hear. They are not only here to pray, they are here to listen. Because we believe here at the River Community Church that your story is important. Just like we took time to hear the backstory of Hagar, we want to take time with you today if you need it. We're not going to rush you. We don't have anywhere else to go but to be with you. It would be such a great honor. Well, how do we overcome loneliness? It's very simple. Here at the river we live with 4 words that absolutely will tie the ribbon about how we overcome. The 4 words here at the river are love, lift, lead, and live. So this is what I want to say to you, friend. Will you allow the Lord to love you? You belong. Will you allow the Lord to lift you and put you in a family? Will you allow the Lord to lead you into a brand new way of living? And we can do all that as we live it together. You know what? I want to leave you with this. You are known by name and you belong. Have a great Sunday. It was really good to be with you.